Hello, everybody, and welcome back. My name is Bogdan Ciocanea, and I'm Product Delivery Community Lead here at Cognizant Softvision, and you are attending the 7th edition of Programmers Week. This year at Programmers Week, we aim to go beyond, to offer you experiences to remember by pushing the limits of technology and innovation. For our next talk, my colleague Radu will speak about going above and beyond Agile Project Management. Radu holds the role of Delivery Manager in Cognizant Softvision and has 12 years of management experience. He is proficient in Agile and Waterfall methodologies and is both mentor and coach for project managers. Radu is the winner of Farming Awards on Delivery Excellence, a client reference category, and is also SAFE certified and internal technical auditor. Before Radu can take over, I encourage everyone to ask questions in the chat module, and we are going to answer them accordingly. Good. Radu, you are on. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here and happy to talk about some exciting topics. Now, just give me 1 second to share my screen with the presentation. Okay, here we are. Now, in many of today's topic, what I will do is we'll compare the reality of the way that things are with the theory. And not everything which is in the book, we all know that can be applied as is. My first topic is the project from start to maturity. Now, in this topic, I will focus on applied management frameworks, team maturity or maturity path, the role of a Scrum Master, and what it means to have an autonomous team in place. Now, let me tell you one important thing, which I learned throughout time. All decisions taken at the beginning of the project defines in most of the cases whether the project will have success or fail. As many as you know, as a project manager, the first few steps which you would need to do at the beginning of any project is to establish communications and to connect with your stakeholders, understand the business requirements and the roles of stakeholders, onboard the teammates, set up a management framework, and many other steps which fit the project needs and wants. But all of this, there is no actually recipe for success. And that is because one project will never going to be the same with another one. Now, what I can tell you all is that you will always going to have different people, different ways of working. The closest you can come to a recipe are the already known implementable management frameworks. I'm talking here about Scrum, Kanban, XP, Waterfall, Lean, but all of them are not entirely adequate. And we will revisit this part, and I have a whole section about it. Now let's look over a few statistics. We have the small IT projects with Agile, which have a success rate of 59% and a Waterfall of 56%. We have the medium ones with Agile 31% and Waterfall 19%, and the large ones with a staggering of 18% and Waterfall 9%. That is the success rate. Now, these are very interesting numbers. Some of them, first time I saw them, they are actually shocking. On large IT projects, even with the best frameworks available to the market, 82% of the projects are failing. Even if we look on the medium ones, almost 70% are failing. And that is huge, at least from my perspective. Another interesting part is the difference between Agile and Waterfall. And that is, if we look from the right to the left, 3%, 12%, and 9%. Even though they are on the large project, the difference is almost double. Let's be honest, what we know about Waterfall, it doesn't look that bad anymore in comparison with the success rate of what we can see here. A more concerning item is that in one McKinsey report says that 17% of the large IT projects go so badly that they are threatening the very existence of the company. What we can conclude out of this, even though Agile is an improvement over the Waterfall, we are not even near of achieving the perfect recipe. Now, let's talk a bit about the team maturity or the maturity path. And I found very interesting Agile maturity model, and I would like to share with you. And this is the one which I'm sharing here right now. Now, there are 4 stages: the ad hoc, the defined, the managed, and the optimized. On the ad hoc, we all know that we have an inconsistency delivery, or at least on the quality. We have some lack of unit testing, lack of management support, also on the unit testing, lack of automation, lack of team awareness, lack of monitoring in some situations. Now, we're already moving forward to the defined step of it. We already have set up the governance team. We are already providing training on the software quality, defining software quality goals, encourage unit testing, set up code review, set up automated build, and so on the DevOps side at least. Moving forward, one more, that's the managed one, the managed step, the setup framework for monitoring, set up the tool for static and force design and force unit testing. And already the last one, the optimization part, optimization step, we're already monitoring everything which is happening in our project, and we're measuring this through the KPIs and so on. Now, the interesting part, what I like the most is not necessarily the description of each stage as the actual title of each stage. This is what I noticed, at least as a project starter. We do start with an ad hoc. We do move forward on defining the processes, and we're managing all that stuff. And at the end, once we know that we put a way of working in place, we're actually optimizing it. And that's a very, very important item. Now, there are no exact definition, but here are a few which describes actually what project management maturity means. And a few which I liked and I depict from the internet. Project management maturity refers to the progressive development of an enterprise-wide project management approach, methodology, strategy, and decision-making process. And that's one of the most important. And I think the key word here is progressive development. And then we have the strategy and the decision-making. Another one, which I also like, a collection of predefined delivery practices and ensure their consistent execution so as to increase the probability that a team or organization can successfully complete projects. The definition of successfully includes completing the project on time and budget. Now, what I would say here is the key word is consistent execution, right? As long as you have a consistent execution, you can say that your team is already mature and already has that increased probability that will have a success project. To oversimplify the definition, the decisions which you make in order to have an effective team which can successfully complete tasks or projects on time and in budget. And what I would like to do next is to discuss a bit about the effectiveness of the team, and more exactly in an agile context where the project manager has only one hat, and that being of a Scrum Master. Now, I hear many times managers say to their teams, if you have any issues, any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. And I found this absolutely wrong. And why is that? You don't want people to come to you. Let me explain to you. First of all, let's go a bit back to the theory. And let's remember what Agile says, first of all, about the role of a Scrum Master. And that is of a facilitator. And this is someone who helps a group of people understand and achieve their objectives by promoting and this is important, collaboration in optimizing the process and creating synergy within the team. Now, moving forward, and let's look of another definition or another part is that's the principle of it. The self-organizing teams encourage great architecture requirements and designs, skilled and motivated team members who have decision-making power. And that's very important. Take ownership, right? Empowering the people that we meet. Communicate regularly with other team members and share ideas that deliver quality products. As I pointed out, I think that here the most important item is decision-making power and taking ownership by the team. And this is important for the optimization and the efficiency of the team. Now let's take the following scenario, right? Let's have one developer of a name, let's say John Doe, comes to you and says, I'm blocked on this task. I cannot move forward. I need someone from the client to explain to me the architecture behind this module. Your decision would naturally be to go to the client and find the architecture and get the information he needs. Now, if you're handing this information to him yourself, that is the mistake, because eventually there might be another need and another one and so forth. Believe me when I'm telling you that you don't want to become the critical piece of a project. And that is, if you're not around and you're on vacation, the project falls apart. You also don't want to work overtime or overburden yourself, because that's absolutely, even for a project manager, leads to overburden. Instead, what you want to do is facilitate a meeting between John Doe and the architect, so that you will not be the middleman. Introduce John Doe to the architect, establish a connection, and also establish the terms of communication. This means that this is one-time facilitation. Next time, John Doe will know whom to go in case he gets stuck. And that is one of the most important parts. That's promoting collaboration. One of the items which I was talking about from the theory of it earlier. And what does promoting collaboration means? As a result, if team autonomy. In the past, I worked for a small company, and this is a very interesting story which I would like to share with you. When I entered the company, we were about 20, 30 people. And together with the CEO, we've reached 200 people in 1 year time span. And I remember one day the CEO came to me and we were in an open space, and he told me, Radu, listen to this. Isn't it amazing? And I was like, what exactly? I don't hear anything. And he was telling me, no, listen to the collaboration. It's like a machine. Because what it means is that if you do not need to interfere, if people collaborate with each other and they move everything forward without you actually being present there, without you actually intervening much. And that is what team autonomy and self-organizing is all about. Now, you want to have your team autonomous, self-organizing. And what does a Scrum Master do? Facilitate so that other people are connected to people with answers. That's why you don't want for them to come to you with any issues or problems. Once people start connecting to each other and start collaborating, the team effectiveness raises. Once the team effectiveness raises, your team is closer to the concept of a mature team. And moreover, social connection raises, team spirit is up, team culture is developed, and a healthy team is always a winning team. Some project managers might say that this wouldn't be okay, wouldn't want for John Doe to communicate directly with the client. If the client is the person with the answer. Now, a bit earlier in our example, we had an architect from the client. Now, what I do advise is that even if the client is the person with the answers, the same thing, the Scrum Master to facilitate the meeting necessarily. And that is because they consider that John Doe does not have, for example, one of the examples, the necessary communication skills. And another item which you all should remember is that one other responsibility of a project manager is to help the team grow, to help the team acquire new skills. So help him, mentor him, offer him communication skills courses. In a long run, not only you will win, but also the whole organization. Now, once the team reaches full maturity, full autonomy, what happens to the framework processes? What happens to the ceremonies of a Scrum framework? And that's what I will focus next. Now, before going there, I just want to recap just for a few seconds, what are the ceremonies of Scrum? And that is the sprint planning, the daily Scrum, the sprint review, sprint retro, and the backlog refinement. Out of all the ceremonies, at the moment the team reaches maturity and full autonomy, 2 of these ceremonies can become obsolete. Why is that? First of all, what will happen is that sprint retrospectives meetings are not like before. First, let's look a bit over the topics of the sprint retrospective, and that is what went well, what to improve, and the action items. The most important item of discussion is what to improve. And this is the part of project's improvement over processes and ways of working through the action items taken. What is interesting is that most of the time, once a team reaches maturity, teams remain with less and less items to improve. Now, and remember, on the last step on that maturity model, which I showed you a bit earlier, it was optimizing. Now, that optimization can it becomes smaller and smaller. And that's what the sprint retro is also about. What do we remain with is what went well, which actually resumes in project success, or moreover, constant project success. A rash decision would be to let's get rid of the retrospectives. Actually, we don't need them. Why? If there are no items to improve, why do we need? My advice would be don't do them. What you can do in order to free more time of your team and let the time be used in a more useful ways is to reduce the frequency of the meetings. The reason behind would be that the project is not static, it's very dynamic. Unexpected events can occur, which might require to be discussed in a retrospective. New team members might join, which might have a different perspective on things or the way he used to do the things. Now let's look over the daily scrums. We know that a daily scrum has the following topics of discussion: achievements since the last day, plan activities until the next daily, identify impediments, blockers, identify parking lot items, identify dependencies, whether they are functional, technical, or people type of dependencies. The first two items are mainly related to the status of the task assigned to each individual in the sprint. Based on my observation, an autonomous team, thus an efficient team, does not wait up till the point of a daily scrum meeting to find solutions, remove impediments or blockers, or to identify parking lot items or solve the dependencies. They do that prior to the meeting with the right people, in other words, with the people who have the answers. When that occurs, the only item discussed in the daily scrum is the status. Now, with a team co-located, you could find tons of information on how to keep the team engaged during the daily scrum. That is why even got its name, daily status, right? Or daily stand-up. Imagine or remember a group of people standing up. That's why I have the picture up there. Away from the computer, connecting to each other, being short and offering a daily status. Some more harsh strategies were involving keeping people in a push-up positions, just to have fun, be short and concise. What you have in a true daily stand-up beyond the work on the project is the social connection. Now, if we remove the social connection, the fun around it, the team being away from the computer, the body language, the camera, one phenomenon is happening. People tend to multitask. When a developer finishes the status, he goes back on developing, because his focus, his mind is at the code and on what is to be done next. And I have conducted different types of exercises in order to validate this behavior. One is asking the teammates what is the status of other colleagues' work. Majority not being able to answer. One other interesting exercise was to understand what is the level of information absorption online and how well people connected to each other on different levels outside the scope of work. The premises of this experiment consisted in a newly formed team during pandemic, which have never met each other before. I have asked each one of the team members to share about their life outside work. That is hobbies, what do they like, what they don't like, and so forth. After 1 month, I have asked each one of them to play a simple game called 2 truths and 1 lie. Each member lists 2 facts about themselves, which are the truth, and the last one is the lie. Everyone else tries to decide which is the lie out of the 3 given statements. Now, what I have concluded that in some situations, 90% of the people were wrong in finding the answer, were wrong in finding the actual lie. So couldn't identify the lie. Now, putting everything together, knowing that my team is autonomous, there are no blockers present in the status for more than 6 months. There are no parking items to discuss more than 6 months. The daily consists only in offering the status. The work from home context shows low information absorption in the daily and is an environment susceptible of multitasking. I have come up with a change in the process. And that is actually getting partially rid of the daily scrum. And here is the plan which I had in mind. Even if there are no blockers, the status of work of an individual is very important. On one side, any project manager needs to know how the team progresses throughout the sprint so that the sprint goal is achieved. On the other side, it is important for the teammates to have access to the status of individual. in order to be able to raise concerns, understand dependencies and others. So the status had to be communicated. That is why I have proposed that the status to be in written communication and not verbal communication. I have created a group where each member of the team communicates their daily status at the end of the day. Second measure I have applied was a weekly status meeting, which each member summarizes their work, concerns, or other issues. This meeting is important to keep teammates, the whole group connection alive as a macro view over the whole project objectives. One advantage to this approach, which anybody would see, and also one of the most important disadvantages of Scrum, is reducing the amount of meetings, increasing the amount of time spent on development, thus increasing team efficiency. Before proceeding with such change, I have conducted a survey among teammates to understand how many are willing to do this. Around 80% of them decided that the written status is enough and there is no need with daily status. 20% of the teammates considered that it's not a good idea. Now, the interesting part is that 20% of the teammates were the ones that had the least autonomous connection, which later was, of course, fixed. There are two important items to take into the consideration with this approach. I would never apply such change before the team becomes mature or autonomous. At the beginning of every project, there are tons of items to discuss, unblock, and facilitate by the project manager. Integration of the teammates and establishing autonomy takes time. That is why such approach should never apply before the above premises are met. One disadvantage of this approach is related to the new team members arriving on the project. Until fully integrated, for them it is extremely important to have a daily one-on-one meeting with the status done by the project manager or the tech lead on the project in order to ensure that a proper ramp-up is done, and on the other hand, to ensure that there is a proper integration with the ways of working on the project. It is a living culture which someone definitely needs to be responsible of. After applying this experiment after 6 months, I got the results. The team members are happy, the setup is fine, no information was low, no blockers were unsolved, there was absolutely no damage done. In one word, the setup was successfully implemented. Now, the next item which I will talk about is a bit more about pandemic. How pandemic affected actually the management. Now, we all know that the pandemic changed our lives. It changed the way we think. It sent us all home and it changed the way we manage. And I will explain. So one of the principles which drives the Agile methodology says, enable face-to-face interaction. Communication is more successful when development teams are co-located. And what we actually did is we've lost this principle, which drives the communication on the Agile thing. Mostly, what is also important is that work from home setups or hybrid, as you know, are the future in this moment. Now, my opinion is that no matter how much the technology advances, and here is an example, the fact that we are equipped with cameras, which can be a redefinition of that face-to-face principle, it will never going to be the same. Now, here is the reality and possibly some explanation. And it's more related to the way I see the things happening, not something related to which was researched either by me or somebody else. Most of the people which are working from home are in a comfort state. The moment opening the camera is required, one of the things which happens is opening up the privacy of an individual home. This is how we end up with a majority of people being reluctant of turning on the camera. I guess everybody knows what we want with the work from home experience: saving time, no more traffic, being more productive, and so on. But what did we lose? We lost the social connection. It is not only the fact that if the person does not turn on the camera, we are losing the facial expression, but we are losing the whole body language. We're losing, as a project manager, the sight over the way the teammates interact with each other. Also, the social connection made through the breaks. Now, there are some interesting things which I also was able to research, and that is related to psychology behind what is happening today with the work from home. Now, let me quote one of the articles from a psychological article. Working from home has been associated with a range of detrimental outcomes, including decreased social interaction, difficulties psychologically detaching from work, tendency to overwork, stress, depression, and anxiety. Work from home can also hinder team effectiveness and creativity and result in fewer career opportunities. Song and Gao found that working from home is associated with higher likelihood of experiencing work-related stress and negative effect. A deeper examination of the purposed benefits of remote working certainly reveals a gloomier picture. Another article also related to work from home, and this time is a Forbes article from the year 2020. For those who are accustomed to and appreciative of conventional office life and a steady rate of social interactions at the office, the shift to remote work as a result of social distancing procedure during COVID-19 pandemic might cause a surprising, even if relatively mild, deterioration of mental health. Now, this is interesting. I would never think about deterioration of mental health. And the main reason of the article focus on related to this mild mental health deterioration is related to isolation and burnout. Some of you might say that is a bit exaggerated. Now, let's think a bit about it, right? It is proven that isolation can be harmful. And it is also proven by numbers that burnout is associated with increased suicidal ideation. One study shows that 19% of those who work from home report loneliness. That's quite large percentage if we think about it. That is why I do encourage any project manager to go out with a team when COVID allows, make coffee breaks meeting, or even some fun games meeting. Work-life balance is very important as well. That is why we should avoid burnout. In US, one study shows that 82% of the remote tech workers felt burned out, with 52% reporting that they would work longer hours than those in the office. Work from home is the future and is now. Organizations around the world are adapting to this condition. The above items are concerning, and we need to be able to diminish them as much as possible. There is one case in the whole organization where people were called back, or employees were called back to the office. It's about a company which some of you might not hear about so much, have not heard about it, because it's quite back in the days, and that is related to Yahoo. Yahoo, I don't know how many of you remember that it was a search engine. Now, they decided that their search engine is not as good because people are working from home. The creativity is actually lost. This is what was all about. And they asked everybody to come back from working from home back into the office. And this was done in 2013 because they had a lot of people working from home back then. Now, there is not much more for me to say, but where is Yahoo today? Meaning they were not able to achieve the objectives which they wanted to be from the perspective of a search engine. Google still remains the best and will remain the best, at least for a longer period of time. Now let's look on some interesting stats from Insider about work from home, and I really hope you all like them because for some of them are definitely amusing. 16% of virtual workers have admitted to customizing their backgrounds in their homes before a video call. 11% said they noticed something they consider unprofessional in the background of a colleague's video. 44% said they choose to wear different clothes when they have video calls. 46% of the people surveyed said they spend more time on their personal appearance before a video call. 12% of workers admitted they are usually naked when taking a conference call. 30% of the workers said their family members, partners, or housemates are number one distractors while working from home. 56% of the people surveyed said they feel their opinions and ideas are heard less in video meetings. And this is actually the highest percentage out of all out there. And this is something which all project managers should know, to think very well about this percentage when they're managing, because we need to cover this part. We need to be able for people to hear their opinions, to feel their opinions properly while working. 23% of the remote employees right now said they miss their colleagues and face-to-face time in the office. Now, that's all about the working from home and the pandemic. Now, what I'm going next is to another topic, that what methodology are you using? This is something which I like talking about many times during the Programmers Week, and one of the topics which I had in the past on the internal talk was about hybrid methodologies, and this is what actually I will focus here about as well. Now, before moving forward, let me define what is actually a project management framework. A project management framework is a set of standard project management processes, templates, and tools that can be used to initiate, plan, execute, control, and close a project. The most popular framework is by far the Scrum. Everybody knows about the Scrum. The KPMG research shows that between 84% of the Agile teams are using Scrum, and that's huge, 84%, versus only 5%, for example, Kanban. Looking at the chart on the right, the 84% you get by adding all the percentages where Scrum is included in the methodology, and that is 56, 14 with the hybrid, the Scrum Ban, which is 8, the Scrum/XP hybrid, which is another 6, and so on. You pretty much get to the 84%. And that is not the only place which you will find different type of statistics, but eventually everything leads to 84%. The image on the left actually is from a different research base, which also shows the same thing, 84%. Now, one of the things which is important here, and I really want to emphasize this, is that nobody tells you that you cannot create your own project management processes, templates, and tools. But what is amazing about the Scrum is that it's like very well-known language across the globe. Many developers experienced this framework, and forming the team makes it easy. They know about the ceremonies, they know about the artifacts, no need to convince them into attending meetings or using tools which they are most probably, they already probably used them in the past. So I even had a discussion at one point to exemplify this with one of my colleagues. And first time I met, it's like, what methodology are you using? Like Scrum? Like Scrum, yeah, Scrum is the best, right? It's the best of the best because everybody knows about Scrum. Everything is about Scrum. What strikes me though is that there is a low probability for anyone to use pure Scrum. In many situations, people are using a type of a hybrid, or what I like to call Scrum process-derived framework or Scrum derivative. That is because many of the projects start with a few basic processes from Scrum and then derivative. On another report, the one on the left side here, has a bit different opinion, related at least to the hybrid methodologies. And they are saying the hybrid is the most common. Now let's look on some practical examples over what hybridization can mean. And I will be quite short here because as much as I was saying in a bit earlier is that I had even a whole presentation, 1 hour presentation over how hybrid it means, how it can, you can work with it and so on. So hybrid, right, pretty much takes the processes or the tools from one and borrows from the other one. And now I have here Lean and Kanban, a bit of principles and practices. Now, what I can tell is that you can definitely take any of the principles, right? For example, from Kanban, decrease waste, and apply it in Scrum. If you consider that you're having a lot of waste there, just apply it there. You can limit, for example, as a practice, limit the work in progress also in the Scrum. Deliver as fast as possible from the Lean or deliver as late as possible. amplifying learning and so on, especially this amplifying learning. I'm actually promoting this principle a lot, even if I'm using Scrum. So why not using this principle or this practice if it helps the team? Scrum, although Kanban, for example, teams are also planning, as you know, they do it less formally, or they do it per milestone and not per iteration. In Scrum, we do it per iteration, per sprint. In Kanban, we do it milestones. In any case, even in Scrum, we are doing the milestones part, which can be considered or not considered as part of a principle or a process in Kanban. To conclude, what is important is to build processes based on your needs, to borrow processes from other methodologies, even if you don't have a pure Scrum, and one which is derived from Scrum. And that is about the methodology. Now, the next interesting item which I will talk about, and my last topic of today, is hashtag no estimates. And there is an interesting trend going out there. First time I heard about it was a few months ago, and since then I started to dig and understand more and more about it. The interesting part is that this trend is being sustained even by university professors, some pretty famous people in the industry. There is even a book out there written on this topic. Now, let's look at what hashtag no estimates says. So hashtag no estimates postulates that estimates are worthless, are waste, and always guesses. Moreover, guesses are always wrong and can be associated with gambling. The author of the book, called Vasco Duarte, made an astonishing claim. Believing in estimates is worse than believing in unicorns. First, let's analyze a bit of the way most of the teams are estimating. And the most popular way of estimating is using Fibonacci sequence, combined with poker plan. Another common way of estimating is in-man days. The difference between the two types of estimation is that one is relative, the other one is absolute. In both cases, a developer uses, and this is very important, past experience in order to provide this estimate. This is the basis of many of the types of estimation in the industry. Another way of doing it, a more common way in manufacturing, is to time the amount of time it takes to do a task, which then becomes repetitive. Once you time the whole process, you actually can easily calculate the numbers and project the amount of time it takes for the items to be manufactured, for example, in 1 year. That is, of course, if the parameters don't change. One challenge in software development is to estimate a large number of user stories from the backlog. That's, for example, 100. And here comes the whole issue, at least with a traditional and common way of estimation. First of all, to estimate 100, for example, user story, it takes tremendous amount of time. You end up in a non-agile environment, and that's because it goes more towards the waterfall. As we know, waterfall is how it was, estimating everything, documenting everything for a whole year, and then starting to work on the development itself. Another one, and that is more related to the agile part, market is always changing. And by the time you start working on the 100th user story, it might become already obsolete. You might not need it. Your estimates are more likely to be wrong and to be more guesstimates on such large amount of user stories. And it is extremely difficult to take into account the dependencies created after developing a certain number of user stories. That is because your software is evolving, and what was 2 story points at the start, due to architecture change or just simply development of the software, might become 13 points in 8 months span. So re-estimation is required, but re-estimation equals again with lots of time spent, thus making some estimates completely off. And these are most of the items which hashtag no estimates pretty much bases on that here. The best you can do in such situation, and that would be my advice, the best you can do is t-shirt sizing estimates. If end date is required, you can try, and that's the interesting part, projecting it based on the estimation of a few user stories. These projections require to be constantly updated so that you can have a more and more accurate view over the end date. That doesn't mean that you have to get rid of Fibonacci estimates, but to combine both projections and estimates so that you can have a more accurate view over your timeline. Now, what the theory behind #no estimates is based on is exactly this challenging situation. The graph, which we can see right now on the screen, is a cumulative flow diagram. The red bar constitutes the number of story points required to be completed. And as we can see, the story points always raising, but in a more smoother path. The bars in blue consist the number of user stories completed. So we are in a situation where developers estimated the whole backlog and then start to work on the user stories. One item which we can notice is that the gap between the blue bars and the red bars is large, indicating a large number of user stories already in the backlog. Projecting both lines give us an approximate date of completion, and that is, as we can see here, 20th of October, 2014. So this is when the whole theory starts. In the second diagram, we have the same backlog, same project, the only difference being that the estimates provided were not anymore in Fibonacci sequence, but in a more simple sequence, and that is 1, 2, and 3, 1 being the easiest one, 3 being the most difficult part. Now, what we can see is that the release projected is on 14th of October, and that is 6-day difference between the projection on the Fibonacci sequence. In the third one, this is again the same situation, cumulative flow diagram, the same project, the same backlog. All the user stories were assigned 1 point, meaning what we do is just count the user stories. Now, if we look over the release, it's 3 weeks difference. If we overlap all 3 cumulative flow diagrams, what we can see is that their projections are quite close to each other. And the advocates of this theory wonder why wasting so much time on estimating when you can simply count. Now, it's interesting about counting. It's definitely something which you would not think about it, but counting instead of estimating only work in large projects with many people and many user stories in the backlog. Now, I was able to find the answer to this by looking on some statistical theories, mainly on one of them, the law of large numbers. And I will explain what the law of large number is. In probability theory, the law of large number is a theorem that describes the results of performing the same experiment a large number of times. According to the law, the average of the result obtained from a large number of trials should be close to the expected value and will tend to become closer to the expected value as more trials are performed. The law of large number is important because it guarantees stable long-term results for the averages of some random events. For example, a single roll of a fair 6-sided dice can produce one of the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, which each with equal probability. Therefore, the expected value of the average of the rolls is 3.5. According to the law of large number, if a large number of 6-sided dice are rolled, the average of their values, sometimes called the simple mean, is likely to be close to 3.5, with the precision increasing as more and more dice, the dice is rolled. Now, let's make a very interesting parallel with this theory. If you're dealing with a large number of user stories and have a dice where instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you have the Fibonacci sequence, and you roll the dice for each user story, the average complexity given per user story will be extremely close to the average given if you'd actually estimate. And that is only if you have a large number of user stories, large teams around. Now, when we talk about large numbers, the amount of user story completed in a given amount of time by a large number of developers will average out easily. And that is why most of the time that projection line, which we saw a bit earlier, will always going to be quite accurate. Now, I do want to conclude about hashtag no estimate, and at least how I view about it. So hashtag no estimate, it works only on large number, but I still do not advise to use it. On small projects, you should continue to estimate because it will going to give you a more accurate view and a more accurate and in-depth planning for short periods of time, like 2 weeks sprint, where projections work only for long periods of time. During the estimation process, dependencies are being identified and the team is more aware of what is required to be accomplished in the near future. Blockers can also be prevented once identified during the estimation process. So the estimation process is not actually a waste. The team is never static and is always dynamic, and this is very important item, at least when we're not talking about large numbers, which means people leave the project. New people enter the project. Velocity is dynamic. Also, average size of user stories can change with the PO being, for example, being replaced. Estimating is able to prevent such dynamics. Projections, not. And my last advice is combine both projections and estimates so that you can have a more accurate view over your timeline. And this is where my presentation ends. So thank you, everybody. Here you have a QR code for a feedback for my presentation. So Bogdan, it's back to you.
Thank you very much, Radu. We have a couple of questions, so I will ask you a few from our public. The first one would be, what do you mean by status discussion during the stand-up?
I mean, during a stand-up, each person provides the information of where they are with a certain task in the sprint. And that is mostly related to, I'm almost done, I'm almost finishing, moving to the next one. It's 80% completed, and so on and so forth. So we are looking over from a perspective of where we are with our work, individual work, during the sprint itself.
And also related to status, speaking of additional weekly status, did you discuss this at Retro before having a survey?
Yes. So this was discussed during not necessarily the Retro, but it was discussed. Mm-hmm. And this weekly status actually provides that macro view in order for everybody to feel comfortable and actually connect. There were some discussions which I had with my teammates, and they were feeling that if we don't have not even a weekly status, being all of us working from home is actually we're losing any type of connection of being all together under one room. Because you have to think about that besides the planning, which sometimes you can do it with a client, or you never have the team together only with yourself, all of it, if you don't have at least a weekly status.
Yep. Can we take one or two more questions?
Yeah.
Okay. Another one would be, why would one estimate story number 100 if it's over capacity?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So what would anyone estimate the story number 100? So if it's already over the capacity of the team?
It's not necessarily over the capacity, because in the moment, for example, you have a team of, let's say 10 people, or let's say 20 people, a team of developers. Now, if the project starts and the client has 100 user stories in the backlog, and they said, okay, here, this is the project for you guys to do this 100 user stories and to finish them. But before doing that, please let me know how long it will take. And that's the moment when they need, and this is what the hashtag no estimates talks about, is they need to estimate, because what the steering committee, the executives pretty much, they are saying, okay, we need to know when they finish, we need to plan our budget, we need to know. And that's the moment where the team is actually forced in some situations to estimate all 100, including the 100th one.
Great. Radu, thank you very much for your presentation, your time. There are still some questions. You can answer them directly in my connector. We are over time right now, so thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you as well. Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.